Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second audio chat in the audio chat pursuit on the Q News Patriot channel here. I'm the Q News Patriot. My name is SG Anon. This little audio chat series that has sort of become a project on this end, and an inspired work in progress to try and bring better information, better clarity, a better understanding to all of you on what we're going through here in the world. Things that are interesting to keep in mind, things that are pertinent and maybe even effective for Patriots to do here, right now from where they're at, and really just a general broader understanding from expertise that I simply don't have. I like to consider myself fairly well read, but that doesn't necessarily make me an expert in things. So today, one of the topics, in response to a great many of you reaching out over these last few weeks, has been what can Patriots do from where we're at and not really be spending extra money or carving out portions of our budget or carving out portions of our time that we're just not really able to find. And one of the experts really in that whole arena, a gentleman that's become an expert in that whole arena, is Mr. McKay, the PatriotStreetfighter. And so Mr. McKay and I had initially connected, as many of you are aware, just prior to the January 20th unveil in Nashville at the Reawaken America tour. And we had a good conversation down there about steps that he has encouraged Patriots to do and really educated Patriots on how they can get in the fight. He likes to use the term "get in the fight" for a very long time now, and he's become very effective at it. And I think it's become a very effective weapon against the deep state. And so in regards to everything that you all have emailed me, and keeping that in mind, I have today with us the PatriotStreetfighter, and we're going to discuss economic warfare. We're going to discuss the Great Awakening, and we're going to discuss re-empowering mankind to take the action steps that they need to take to get their spirit ignited, get the ether in the engine, and get that engine block going so that we can move this ball forward as one mankind. So without further ado, Scott, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, sir. Good to be here with you.
So with regards to the things that Patriots can do and the things that Patriots can take and all of that sort of stuff, we're going to get into that, I think, in just a minute. But contextually, I thought it would be helpful if we did a heart-to-heart background on where Operation Tomahawk was conceived, what the intentionality of this entire operation was from the beginning, and what it's really being used for in light of the corporate control that we've seen exacted upon us through COVID and then post-COVID, where this sort of corporate autocracy forced us into patterns of behavior and routines of employment and job qualification and things like that were never really intended.
I'll tell you, I know your audience loves the way you frame things, because I do too. And the way you frame them creates a picture, because the human mind sees in pictures. It doesn't see in words. When somebody says cat, you don't see three letters in your mind, C-A-T. You see this furry creature, that's kind of, darting around the neighborhood. So the way you put this particular point, patterns of behavior. You mentioned patterns of behavior that they kind of force us into. So I'm going to give you the 80,000 foot view on that answer, and then I'm going to take it to ground level. It was an evolution for me since we started PatriotStreetfighter. First of all, most of the world knows I walked away from elected politics after 16 years because I was on a pursuit in my life. Everything I did in my life for 16 years was designed to one day get to the United States Senate. Everything I did, the way I talked, the way I behaved. I know most people would find that today very hard to believe. It's counter all of that, but there's a reason for that. But so my everything about my life was designed for that, until I realized that this architecture is corrupt, and the vast majority of these people in leadership are outright criminals. So I walked away brokenhearted, and I was off the playing field really in elected politics, and still am, actually. But it was Donald Trump's announcement for the run for the presidency that reignited something in me, that we had hope, because there was a guy that I could clearly see from day one was the guy we've been waiting for. I never saw him coming. I said, there's no Reagan on the horizon. That's what scares me. But So I've seen this very nefarious and evil um, group of people on the planet who I didn't realize how much power they had, but I've watched what they've done in the political realm here in the United States. Then it became apparent to me, certainly with the advent of the Trump presidency and the intelligence operation that began October 28th, 2017. I came to realize that this wasn't a problem in the States, it was a problem worldwide. What I began to learn, even in a deeper level, was, as you said, this corporate machine that is operating in a way to corner the planet, corner humanity, and have their way with them. This corporate machine who has bought out the entire political construct worldwide, all controlled by this corporate machine, because that's where the money comes from. That's the theft banking system, whereby they absorb, suck up our productive earnings, our money, into their machine and distribute it to the power brokers worldwide to inflict upon us whatever they want to inflict upon us, to get us under control, eliminate us, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I began Patriot Street Fighter, that became that offensive weapon, this ruthless voice that was once, had the communication set of a statesman, um, whereby if I didn't find a way to wake people up, that we were just going to slowly, in a sleepwalk, in nature, walk right over the cliff forever. And it became incredibly effective and powerful, as I learned. And besides, it was going to be that way no matter what, because I had had enough. I was frustrated beyond measure, and it was like there's nothing but this ruthless energy coming out of me. Once they launched Antifa, BLM, and the politicians sat by while they burned down cities and murdered people in the streets and did nothing. Police departments did nothing. Mayors did nothing. So as I started marching forward on this battlefield, and we started taking a lot of ground in this great awakening, a lot of people, a lot of great podcasters coming up like you, waking people up. Then we went on the road. Sasha Stone, myself, Lee Dundas, we went on the first tour we went on. And then I started a second tour that year in the fall, the Patriot Street Fighter tour. And that the purpose of it was for people to come out into the open, where I would do the same. And we would get a chance to have this discussion face to face, get a chance to hug each other, slap high fives, meet people, listen to their stories, and get patriots coming together to unite, to make friendships, and get inside. I called it the temporal love bubble, this massive energy force that emanates from the souls and the spirits of we the people, who are righteous, who are just, who want nothing more than to live on a planet that it allows them to be happy, to raise their family, to do things for their family, and have time with their family and serve their fellow mankind, and do it all together. That's what God put us here for. And it's called the ascension experience. And we can't do that because people are slugging it out. It's guerrilla warfare every day, just trying to survive, feed your kids, have them educated, find time or a little bit of money to have a mini vacation, try to enjoy life a bit. And so that is not something that's even doable. So when we went on tour, it didn't cost any money to come out and see us. I raised money prior to. Then once we broke up from the original tour with Robert David Steele, he showed himself to be somebody that we weren't aligned with in our values. Moved away, and we just continued on. And other people would donate at those if they so chose to do that. But what we did was we were able to amass tens of thousands of people together over this course of time, where not only are they coming out to see us, they're meeting each other. And one thing, and this is a common denominator for what we're talking about today, is this. Many people, and I mean the thousands of people, had said to me in their conversations with me that I want to get into the fight, but I just don't know what to do. And of course, my answer would be, yes, I mean, I understand. Run for the school board, go to the election integrity meetings, go to the board of supervisors meeting and listen to what they're saying and doing, and helps, whatever, these things that we do as citizens. And I have to understand the reality that not everybody's going to do that. They don't have the comfort level to do it. I've got a background in behavioral science. I could tell you within 2 minutes maybe 3 minutes talking to somebody exactly what their profile was, what their thought process was, and I could tell which ones are not going to go out and engage the society on that level because their experience, their lack of experience, I should say, some are intimidated, some are uncomfortable, nervous, whatever. And I don't see putting people in that position as making them effective. So then it comes to what became the number one weapon for PatriotStreetfighter, what we're talking about today. And that all started when Nino Rodriguez reached out to me because he wanted me to take a look at something. I get that every week of my life. People want me to take a look at something, and it typically has to do with some type of revenue opportunity or where people can make money. And the world pretty much at this point knows that my mission is very focused. It doesn't focus on that stuff. It's focused on, 4 things that serve my mission. And I've turned away millions of dollars, millions in the last couple of years because, as I said before, people that say they want to help the country, they want to go to politics or whatever, once they realize they can get rich, what do they always do? Sacrifice their mission for money. And I was proven to the world, I'm the guy that you don't have a checkbook big enough to write a check that'll actually get me to change my direction. It's always been that way. So with this, it was going to be one of those polite acquiescence momentarily, so I could placate a very good friend of mine. And he's such an endearing guy, with Nino Rodriguez, you just you want to do anything with him or for him because he's just a wonderful guy. So took a couple of months. I finally got in front of a Zoom. Some girls showed me this picture, and again, I had my no loaded up, and it was a legitimate one because I have no time for anything and I have no bandwidth. So I was going to be polite, watch, and I watched and politely. And on the Zoom, they showed this pie chart. And I come from the wellness industry, so I'm embarrassed to say this. I knew many of these things, but I still continue to operate the same way that empowered these criminal corporate architecture. I saw this pie chart with hundreds of companies, and there's 11. It's divided into 11 slices of pie. All the brand names of companies that we know, the consumer products industry, all of them. So there they are. And on the outside of each slice of pie is a single multinational corporation that owns all of the ones that are in that slice. So what I could see was 11 multinational corporations bought up all the rest, like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, Kraft, Nestle, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, and a couple others. There's 11 of them in total. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But the next picture I saw were the 3 overlords who controlled them, those 11. And that was BlackRock, or is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. That was it, right? That's all I needed to see right there. And so as soon as they stopped talking, I said, I'm very apprehensive to say to you ladies what I'm about to say, because I knew if I said it, then that sort of backed me into a position I needed to then take action. I said, I'm very enthusiastic about what I see here, and I'm going to tell you why. And I just launched into this tirade, like I do at times, occasionally. And I just said, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to launch an economic warfare operation against these scumbags and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the simple fact is this. What I saw here was a massive poison machine. All these companies that are manufacturing good for us, even though they require neurotoxins, carcinogens, poisons, toxins of all kinds. They require those, and they have built in us a mindset, SG, that there's only one pathway in the course of the evolution of life, and that is coal, gas, oil for energy when we have free energy, 0 point energy that Tesla is trying to get into the world. All the things that we look around as the architecture of this planet, we think it's just a one-track natural course of our evolution, and it just has to be that way. It's not. We could fashion this planet in any way, shape, and form that we see fit. Well, the reason that it's in this form now, that these corporations, that I call them the murder machine, are convincing us to consume this stuff, to put it on our babies' bottoms, just like Johnson and Johnson's baby powder. They're being sued for the second time for putting asbestos in baby powder. You have to ask yourself a question. If there's such a lawsuit, and there is, and if this is a second time, and it is, and if they have actually done this, why on earth would they do something this evil? Well, that should answer every question you have. They are at war with the people. The governments of the world are at war with their own people. And I finally came to conclude this. So, with that being said, the simple answer is, how do we stop giving these killers our money? How do we shut off the cash flow? So it's pretty easy. We've identified, of course, as you know, basically our joint venture partner here that's done it right for 37 years and at great cost, and a multi-billion-dollar privately owned corporation. And they've been doing exactly what we should have had seen from every company. It's all natural products, and they don't charge you 3 times what they do the poison like they do at Target or Walmart. It's even the same cost of Target or Walmart or less. So when I saw the capacity that we had to fight back in a different way here, I thought to myself, wow, I just hit the mother lode by what I saw, because this answers the one question that I've had by the thousands. And that is, what can I do to get in a fight? And it hit me. I'm like, holy Mary, Mother of God, this is it. This is the most devastating weapon we have on this architecture, because when you gut their cash flow, when you shut down their blood supply, which is our money, they die. And it's really simple, right? People think that you have to win a battle. I mean, why does Sun Tzu or Chinese talk about the death of 1,000 cuts, right? You don't have to take somebody's head off. The death of 1,000 cuts will just bleed them out. And here's how we do it. We walk away from these poison distribution operations. We walk away from these big box stores that they herded us into during this bioweapon attack we call COVID, and then murdered millions of our friends' mom and pop businesses all over the nation, because you could get sick from COVID if you were in a mom and pop, but you couldn't in a big box store where you just stand 6 feet apart. Insanity, all of it. So it's a multi-pronged attack to go after them in multiple ways. Reduce the foot traffic at these big box stores they tried to herd us into so they could eventually control us. Shut off the cash flow to the manufacturers that produce those products. And also, in an ancillary fashion, it also guts the cash flow of Dow Chemical, DuPont, and these chemical companies that are making this poison. And to drive the point home, and I'll turn it back to you, is look at East Palestine. As Dr. Robert Young has shown us, it is vanillidine dichloride that is a result of a fire they set to these poisonous chemicals that is going to cause the death of 100 million people in this country, the entire eastern seaboard, so as far west as Indiana, down as far as Florida. And they found out where those trains were coming from. They were coming from the place where these chemicals were stored that were owned by Dow Chemical. So this one move that I made became the most powerful thing we've done in Patriot Street Fighter, because we built this army of thousands of people that have now got in this fight and said, you know what? I'm not going to contribute one more penny of my hard-earned money to this murder machine, to this machine that will do all their research. And they'll also put out their peer-reviewed literature from their double-blind, placebo-controlled products will kill human organisms or cause a whole host of diseases. They actually have to publish this stuff, and they do. And on the other side, then they spend $1 trillion in advertising, convincing us that what they just published is not that big a deal because this is within tolerable limits. Yet the disease rates in this country has skyrocketed in 40 years. Like you can't even imagine. If you're my age, I remember what it was like at 12 years old. Nobody got cancer. When somebody did, everybody freaked out. Now it's no big deal. That's too bad. So that was what became this war machine that now everybody who wants to get in the fight can get in a fight. It's really simple. Join SG's army, and now you have a way to help us expand the forces, because once these numbers get to a certain point, and I want to drive them to 10 million. Once it hits critical mass, a mushroom cloud goes up because it runs the table. Everybody says, I'm in too. And literally, when that happens, the collapse in this corporate architecture is overnight. It doesn't happen slowly over years. It doesn't take a year, it doesn't take months. It literally happens overnight because once the cash stops, they cannot make the moves fast enough with the entire infrastructure they built that that has to be paid for and run. Anyways, that's the 80,000 foot view of all of it.
Well, I'm glad you gave us that view, because that was really a very in-depth and thorough point of view. And honestly, one of the things that was very compelling when you and I spoke initially about, what the intentionality, what the overall vision for this entire process was, it resonated with me in a very deep way, because of course, people out there know that my awakening experience was spurred on by the awareness that we were not only being poisoned, but we were being made a part of these satanic sacrificial rituals and cannibalistic behavior at the molecular protein level, which is still matter. It's still tissue. It's still a physical thing. It's just a very tiny physical thing, but it's how they slipped it into us all this time. And when I realized that that was one of the things that was happening, it sent me on a journey where I found all sorts of poison, all sorts of toxicity, all sorts of very malevolent, very evil behavior governing things like vaccination campaigns, or food drives, or involving certain corporate architectures into producing all this food for this this particular third world country, or these when these corporations go and they open up supply chains and they enslave the local population in the village or the few villages that are around in there. They basically become the only opportunity for work within a 2 or 3 days walk, and so everyone has to be a part of this operation to fund their machine, and they pay them pennies on the dollar per day to live. They keep them impoverished. And so when we initially talked, this was not simply an economic warfare machine to me, even though I think that is a fantastic and is really one of the key areas that patriots can get involved in at the ground level where they're at, right? Controlling to the extent that we can where we put our money, which is, as you said, their lifeblood. But more than that, this whole operation and operations out there that are similar in concept, but are many, many magnitudes smaller and less well equipped. This is an awakening machine, because we're removing in a great big way all of the key components of this spiritual enslavement process that they have made possible here in the world. And so, a good example of that being the fact that a lot of the same household stuff that we would be, going and acquiring and interacting with at the local corporations, at the local deep state big box stores, at the local storefronts, which all go back to the same 3 to 5 sources at the very top, we would be substituting that for, I guess, products really, or things that we use every day and every month, for things that are less impactful, and in some, in the negative profile, and in many respects are naturally derived and are quite safe. Excuse me. So, in some respects. So that being said, that has the net effect, from where I'm standing, of helping to remove the blood of the machine, but also the very things that are in those chemicals, the parabens, the sulfates, the dioxins, the diazepines and things like that, the heavy metals that are in a lot of our product out there, right, that we use, that we interact with, that we've been compelled, really culturally conditioned throughout most of the developed world to need to use, et cetera, et cetera. And so this becomes, from where I'm at, and when we initially talked about this, my overall impression was how, this is a way to help encourage the human being, the physiological apparatus, to help catch up to speed with the spiritual apparatus, which of course is sustaining us at all times. But we have been so pinched off from that because we have aluminum and barium and strontium in our vaccinations, and we have toxic ingredients at every turn. We've got human meat in McDonald's. We've got heavy metals in so many different creams, lotions. We have aborted fetal cells and so much of the food product out there. And so we really have, like you said, this poison matrix that was created to keep us spiritually weak. And so taking a step not only to wage the economic war, but to wage the awakening machine, to get the awakening on a greater traction, because I think the awakening really personally, not necessarily that it starts, but that it is really helped by, caring for our own spirit and caring for our bodies, which really is the temple. We have these bodies which allow us to move through this plane of existence and to interact spiritually and to have all of these wonderful connections with God. And unbeknownst to us, we've been poisoning our own bodies most of our lives, participating in a system where there was no other option. And what I understood when we initially talked, and I just want you to correct me if I'm wrong, is that for the first time, really, there is an operation in the ball field, if you will, to help patriots disconnect from that apparatus permanently.
Absolutely. And if you think about this, you mentioned these various degrees as that we've all seen, heard, or read on the products they manufacture. Now, we know what they can do. Here's a question I ask people is this. Do you really think God would have put such a compound on the planet that would cause this kind of harm to his own sons and daughters and his own creation? It's absurd to think so. I'm a born again Christian, and I have learned over the course of my life how powerful their mind control system is. Okay. For example, and this is just kind of on the spiritual track. They never wanted us to be spiritually connected to our creator. Okay. So they craft things and they refashion things or reinterpret things in a way whereby they can render us powerless. And one of the things that you and I spoke of once, and I've said this on some of the bigger stages we've been on in the last 2 years when it comes to God and the concept of God and the concept of prayer. And I say, here's the thing. Many people are walking around on a planet, they feel lost because they don't feel this personal connection with their creator. We all should be. We're connected to our parents, right? Mom and dad. We feel that from across the distances and across time. Shouldn't we feel the same with our creator, the God the Almighty that is responsible for all things? Yet we struggle with that. And what we learn is over time, as you and I spoke of this, and many people know this, is the implementation of fluoride in water, in toothpaste, because fluoride will crystallize that pineal gland in our brain, which is kind of our spiritual antenna. And we actually can feel like and communicate with our creator. And they don't want us to. And also to back that up, as King James, had the Bible rewritten for his purposes. Most people don't even know that, King James wasn't even a believer, was an atheist. But so they craft that message in that just pray and pray about it. I saw this in business. People say, I'm just going to pray about it tonight. Okay, well, aren't you sitting here because God put you in a good place? Like, you have to go ask God for and I saw people use that as an out for anything. Like, well, I talked to God and he said this. I'm like, that's interesting because I'm a born again Christian. I haven't read a book for 20 years and he's the one that shared with me, I should be doing what I'm doing. Right. I saw this going on all the time. And I thought, if they teach us to sit around and close our eyes and say this, please God, give me this. Please God, do this. Please God, whatever. Please God, allow me to graciously take this beating that the multinational corporate machine is putting on me because it's going to help me, learn patience and all this stuff. Right. So we spend so much time talking that we never learn anything. And it's like I've said to people, look, if you're going to pray, close your eyes and shut up. Don't say a word. Why? It's meditation. What did Christ do? Sat endless periods of time in meditation. What is that? Get your mind quiet. There's a lot of noise in there, a lot. Shut it down. Be quiet. And then let the conversation happen, because the thoughts and ideas that come in your brain, if you can get it quiet and not have those little rabbits darting through your mind that are part of your outside stimuli with your eyes open, your ears open, these original thoughts from your creator will start to come in there, and you'll now be contemplating things you haven't. And those contemplations you have are what lead you to understand and come to the conclusion of that there's a higher power that we can tap into and get guidance from. We just can't when we're talking, and we can't when our eyes are taking in information, specifically the idiot box on the wall at home that is a programming machine for the people to control humanity. So, conceptually, this gets much, much larger than just this warfare operation. It's trying to help people understand that if somebody's there's some countries you can't, fluoride's illegal, right? You can't have it in Europe and France. But why here when we know what it does? Somebody wants something to not evolve in us because of the power we have as the human species. So when I look at this from that point of view, it gets much, much bigger than that, because this is a spiritual battle from top to bottom. We're waging it in the physical realm, but the ancillary energies that come off of that, not just the battle itself, but the new evolution of our higher thinking is a spiritual ascension process, which makes us even more powerful. That's why I've said many times, we're winning this time. We're going to win this one, and it's for all the marbles, 100%, 1,000%. We just are now going to determine how fast we do and how we minimize the death and destruction to humanity by the speed with which we conduct this war. And that's why we're talking today, to bring as many people to the understanding so they can clearly see they are killing us, not by chance or by accident. They really, 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 really nefariously are in boardrooms and coming up with these ideas of how they can keep thinning the population and creating this misery. It's documented now. It's proven. And people have a hard time believing any of this, because that mind has been programmed for their entire lives to think a certain way and believe anything it is told by that architecture that they erected.
But you couldn't have really said it any better. A good crossover and a good segue from that really is this whole discussion about how the Great Awakening is humanity's reclamation of all of our qualities that the ancients had, the things that we look back on, and we rely on some of that knowledge and that oral tradition. A good example of that being modern medicine, right? Modern medicine's been around about 160, 200 years in its current form. But for the previous 3,000 years before that, humanity was utilizing the medicines and the natural options provided by by God here for our earth, for us to use and be a part of our earthly experience and to nourish and replenish our bodies. And so I read an article. It wasn't a scientific article. It was a blog post several years back. Matter of fact, I don't even know if it's still on the web, but the title of it was very fascinating to me back then. This was in 2018, 2019. And the title of the article was The Neurochemical Properties of MK Ultra. And it was this blogger that had gone back and had examined what MK Ultra was and what the overall goal, the overall objective for the rollout of that multi-pronged psychological warfare and really spiritual warfare operation that the CIA waged on the entirety of mankind everywhere, and found out that through their feeder arms, they controlled a lot of these hedge funds and a lot of these companies, or there were similar interests that were all in the same rooms together that were discussing these things. And so what we had was, with this multi-pronged attack through the corporate sector, through the commercial sector, through the entertainment space, through the media space, through pop culture and cinema, all designed and geared to disempower and disable our ability to think clearly and to connect with a higher part of the human being. We're sustained by the life force, that Holy Spirit of all things at all times, right? And when we accept Christ into our heart, we're really asking, Jesus and his way of life to come in and govern, and our understanding of him to govern how we're doing what we're doing, and to inspire us, to guide us, to help direct our steps, because our steps determine our actions, and our actions will determine how this earth eventually looks. And so in seeking to cripple us in that, we've had this multi-pronged assault that has come absolutely through the physical commercial sector. Look back in the 50s, we had thalidomide, mercury, we've had bleaches, dyes, all sorts of chemicals that have been lost, Roundup, for example, all sorts
Lead.
of chemicals and pesticides over the years that have been part of a larger spiritual warfare operation that was really controlled by the CIA. And so
Hmm.
now, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, we have, as patriots from where we're at, we can get in the fight with an economic warfare platform, but one that encourages us into an awakening experience rather than furthering our own personal poisoning. Is that true?
Yeah, it's 100% true. And the way that God communicates with us, SG, is through happenings in our life, happenstances, people that come into our lives sort of out of the blue at the right time. It's just the way it all works, and that's driven by that conscious thought process that we have, because it emanates this frequency into the ether, and it draws to us, what matches that frequency. Nobody could have foretold Patriot Street Fighter coming on like it did. I mean, people have heard my background story. Although I knew the point was coming in my world most of my adult life, and I thought it was going to be the U.S. Senate where I'd do real battle. It became this. I never saw it coming. But the thing of it is the reason why I think it became so prominent so fast was, number one, I could clearly see the picture because I've been at this for 32 years now. And I could clearly see this picture, and having a statesman like delivery and dialogue didn't move the needle one bit. I mean, for goodness sakes, we learn about 911 being an inside job by the Bush cartel dynasty, and Mossad, the clowns in America, Clinton machine, being done by our own people. It's still today hard for people to get their head around that. But these happenstances that are happening in this realm that we're in right now are creating a lot of unexplainable things. And obviously, this great awakening is a force that cannot be stopped. So, what I would say, my mind floated as it does. I see rabbits still, and I chase them when I'm talking about something in my mind. But the simple fact is that we are given thoughts and images that are communications from our Creator, and they're coming now so hard, so much harder, and so much faster. And along with that, to try to stifle the actions that we may take, is the enemy and the opposition that'll do anything it can to counter this great awakening. And I remember reading the book Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill's hidden manuscript, most powerful book that I had read up to that time outside of the Bible. And I read the manuscript before it was published because Sharon Lecter was a friend of mine, and she was the one who annotated it when the Hill Foundation decided it was time the world saw his real work. And in that book, as he's having a dialogue with the devil to try to figure out how does the devil capture 98% of us, one of the things he said was like, well, it's easy. I use a lot of people like the clergy, like the parents, like the school teachers, whatever, using we the people in a fashion where we're an oppositional force against the good side of each other. So, and that's happening today. I have a lot of people out there that are, again, these are people who are being affected the same way that we are by this machine, yet they're defending the machine. They're trying to counter anything you do or say, anything I do or say. And that's why they're so powerful. The other side has always been so powerful because they've used us to basically help us commit our own suicide. That's changing now. And to bring this point home, to show you that it has never changed, it's always been this way. Look at what Christ was trying to share with us, the world. They won't tell you about Christ's 17 lost years, right? You know where Christ was, everything about his life from 0 to 3, but all of a sudden we know nothing. Christ shows up at the age of 30 and changes the planet, the universe forever. So where was he? Like nobody ever, it's not even a question. They're so good at it. It's not even a question until I'm in my 40s. Well, where was he? And I was a born again Christian at 14, reading the book 300 days a year. And so Christ was trying to get the same message across, sat decades in meditation with people of higher consciousness at the time. Nobody's consciousness resonated higher than Christ on the planet, because of, what was special about, Christ as a being here, Son of Man, son, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all in one physical entity. But Christ was trying to tell the people of that time exactly the quantum physical messages you and I talk about. And what did they do, people? What did they do to shut down this message that was so dangerous that could bring down their entire controlling order in a brutal fashion, more so than probably anything we've ever seen in history? This brutal, horrific conduct of an insane physical punishment and injury to this holy man, to make such an example that nobody would ever again utter any of these ideas or utterances, because it was the greatest threat they had ever seen at that time. Well, here we are once again. And that Christed spirit is in many, many people now on this planet. I believe the second coming of Christ isn't necessarily this being setting its foot on the planet. I believe the second coming of Christ is that Christ consciousness now coming alive in many beings on this planet that are rising to bring this ultimate battle and this enemy to heal, so we can bring this planet to what has been predicted, not just in the Bible and all religious texts, but on the caves or the walls of caves, tens of thousands of years old around the world. The same thing. The time is coming. That time is coming where we, the righteous, they call us the meek, which we were, because we were taught, just turn the other cheek. Just turn the other cheek. Hit them, hit you, turn the other cheek. Kill your parents with cancer. Just turn the other cheek. Is a brilliant planning, mechanism they put in place. I can assure you, in my opinion, I should say, God did not put us here to suffer brutality, to suffer what I just suffered yesterday with my uncle, my dad's brother, who stood in the gap since they killed my father, just died yesterday. 75 years old, very good shape. Why? Because whatever illness he had, he refused to go into the hospital because he wasn't going to step into the 21st century killing fields. This is the degree to with which they are willing to march their troops right into our lives, dead and center. And we'll take you out if you push back on us at all. And look where we are today. They've been doing the same thing to people since they took Christ's life. So if people want to honor Christ, in my opinion, it's time to start honoring Christ's consciousness and whatever is inside of you, to start utilizing it, to start helping bring this thing down, to save our fellow man. Because there are people all over the world right now on their knees, on the floor, in bed, crying their eyes out, because the death that happened in their scope today from this machine is somebody that they loved, their baby, their husband or wife, their sister, their parent, a good friend. This misery that we suffer as human beings was not put upon us by God as a way to get us to spiritually elevate. It was put on them. It was put upon by them. And that's what this whole mission is in the Great Awakening, is to bring people awake to it all, so we then respond to it, and in kind fashion if we need to. And that's what you and I connecting for in this mission is all about. Mine is provocative. The intellectual side of me didn't seem to work with my statesman conduct through my life. The warfare style that I have has become very effective. The intellectual side that you have brought to this battle, the message and the way you bring it to this battle resonates at such a high frequency that those people who do not have that warfare spirit yet in their soul, boom, they're coming alive because of the way you communicate. And everybody has a role to play here. There's so many brilliant, beautiful people who wake up in the morning, SG, they look in the mirror and they see nothing. They see just an average person. I'm just this guy, or I'm just this girl. I'm not like that person over there or that person there or like Scott McKay or SG. And you know what the sad thing for me is? There are so many powerful people that are looking in mirrors every day thinking that same thing, that in terms of their contribution to humanity would bury you and I instantly. They just have never been in a position to understand why they're here, because the matrix has kept that blanket of uncertainty over them that they have not been able to see clearly and break out. It's what happened to me. It's what held me back for decades, even though I was doing things in life, but for what was important, held me back for decades. Self-doubt, fear, insecurities, esteem issues, whatever. People say, "Oh, not me. I've got great self-esteem." Cut the BS. Cut the BS. I got a background in behavioral science to understand these things. And those people who sitting there and doing nothing in this war, all I can say, I know what's going on inside. It's going to continue to eat you alive when you lay in bed awake at night, and you don't know why, other than the fact that something inside of you wants to bust out and wage into this realm what you have ordained inside of you innately to serve humanity. It's going to bust out sooner or later, I hope, for you, because it's a lot less painful when you say, "I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I'm going to go out and I'm going to deliver my own victory for humanity on this battlefield in this war, which appears to many people like we're losing. And if I sit here any longer, it's just going to probably destroy me, because something I feel inside of me is telling me, number one, I can do something about it. Number two, I've got something to offer this planet, because I wasn't put here for no reason at all." And if you get to that conclusion, you'll be like Maria Lynn Kirkostas. One of my biggest fans in the world was her 93-year-old mother. Maria was working in the healthcare industry, about ready to lose her house, I think, at that time. She engaged me on Operation Tomahawk. And you know what she's doing today? Build a big army. And now she is a podcaster, something she never saw happening in her life. This wasn't in her cards. But, this is one of the things that helped her step into her own, to see who she really is. And now she's out there shining. She's lighting fires all over the place. Anyways, that's, again, my my overall message is exactly that. And I think that the reason that we're here today, SG, is people have learned that you and I are completely aligned on the same wavelength about how we see virtually everything. Certainly the Great Awakening, certainly the spiritual ascension side. And I find it an interesting component to all of this, how we're bringing two different forces from opposite end of the spectrum of delivery, and we're meeting in the middle and showing our commonalities of how we now didn't just double the power of the message. It's like two oxen. One ox can pull 7,000 pounds. Two of them together can pull 28,000 pounds. It becomes a symbiotic force. That's why we're trying to get more people to come into this new army, the SG's command, because it empowers all of those people, all of you together, times 100, to bring this force against this evil machine. And not only that, it's pretty exciting. I mean, the new people you lock arms with and you meet that you would never meet on this planet are now an army of friends, where you fall in love with more people and there's excitement, enthusiasm, support. In my opinion, that's the most powerful thing, is watching we the people come together.
Well, Q tells us a lot that we are the cure to their disease. We are the answer to the question that has been asked since the beginning of time about here in the world, how's the world really supposed to be? And when you and I first talked about this, and we came on, me and my family, we came on with Tomahawk, and we decided to go ahead and take as much of our, raw liquid that we have. And, I still work a day job, and I intend to keep working my day job, obviously, because I enjoy what I do and I'm proud of what I do. But Aside from that, we took what we had and we took it out of the death machine, and invested into this a little bit. I shouldn't say invest, it's not the right word. We simply just switched where we were doing our shopping. I mean, at the brass tacks level, that's really what it was. And shortly thereafter, my little one had a pretty bad chemical burn on his hands. I talked about this a little bit on a statement video that I released on the Q News Patriot just recently. It was a few weeks back, a couple weeks ago, and really rough, rough looking burn, bright red, and his whimpering, and you could tell he was hurting. And we used one of the, I think it was a cream that we had gotten through this, Patriot factory that you all are hooked into as part of Tomahawk. And within 60 seconds, we were talking about very serious pain relief. I mean, he brightened up, he stopped crying. And within maybe 3 to 5 minutes from that point, we were really having no pain at all. And it was a pain reduction cream. So it's worth highlighting that. It didn't fix the burn. I mean, the burn had to heal on its own. It was a pretty rough soap burn. The soap was made by Ecolab, one of our great friends in the chemical poison kill machine world. And excuse me, or marketed by Ecolab, rather, I should say. But this particular cream that we had made a world of difference for my little one, and it helped him sleep better that night. We put it on his hands again before bed, and by the next day we had some skin cell regeneration. They have a very fast metabolism, a very good regeneration rate when they're young, right? We all need it because we get ourselves hurt. But it was just absolutely mind-blowing to me, and that was really where I thought this is important to share, regardless of the economic warfare platform portion, regardless of the physical kinetics of it here in the world. This brought relief, which instilled confidence and power back into my 5-year-old. And that's really what we're talking about at the macro level here as adults. We are a lot like children, right? We have a spirit, we have a soul, we have an awareness that we're always coming into, always refining, always trying to make bigger and better. We're always trying to gain more understanding. We're always trying to do the best that we can for ourselves and for others. Sometimes kids don't get that, but a lot of times they do. They're pretty just loving entities, right? And so bringing empowerment and bringing an ability to have confidence again in what we're doing, whether it's taking care of our body, whether it's getting involved in the fight economically, whether it's encouraging our own spiritual awakening process, whether it's helping our family to encourage their spiritual awakening process. For me, this was a very big deal, because our confidence and our perception and how we feel at the end of the day, how we feel as human beings, is how they have kept this matrix of control in place, right? We have felt just good enough that it wasn't worth getting out of line. It wasn't worth rattling the boat or the cage. We had a job, we had the family, we had enough entertainment to be happy, but we've never felt truly secure. The vast portion of patriots out there, and certainly the vast majority of listeners here in this particular program, there's never been financial security at a long-term level. There's never been peacefulness about, the work-life balance and the work-life situation and the kids and the schools and the doctor's appointments and having to balance medical procedures. And then that doesn't even account for, accidents that happen sometimes, which aren't really anybody's fault necessarily, but they interrupt the process even more. And so what this represented for me, for my, long-term, my family's long-term awakening process, was some peace of mind, some reduction in some serious reduction in the toxicity and the poisons that are put into the system, right? To put into our cultural flow of life. A way to disconnect a lot from that, not entirely, but well over 80%, I would say. The opportunity to, bring to others a way to get involved and empower them, which is really what this entire audio file series was about. My mentor was a great man. And before he passed, last year, like I tell people, we had a very interesting conversation, and the conversation was really reading the morale in the room. It was reading the morale in the community as a whole, and we the people everywhere. And we were frankly very war weary. And so coming on, in the fashion that I did, I'm naturally sort of an uplifter. I'm naturally sort of an encourager, and I'm pretty measured all the time, even in my reactivity when, people, it's just my personality. It's part of who I am. I'm emotional, but I consider myself pretty, even keeled, even in my reactions. And I got to admit, for the first time in a while, when I was looking into Tomahawk, we were talking about it, I was thinking to myself, this is a way to empower in a serious, tangible, physical way a lot of folks out there who are wondering, what the heck can I do? They're just coming around to this awakening. They're just now realizing that there really are evil hedge funds. They're just now realizing that fluoride is, in fact, a neurotoxin. They're just now realizing that cyanocobalamin, which is in most of our B vitamins that you get off the store shelves, is linked to shortness of breath, asthma, and heart palpitations. So they're just now realizing a lot of this coming into the fold, coming into the awakening, putting the picture together about this relationship between government, business, finance, and the controllers. And they're freaking out and they're saying, we have no power. What can we do? I feel like I've had no power my whole life. And while it is true that has been no power really in our lives offered up until this awakening movement, really, and the presidency of Donald J. Trump, this is a step the Patriots can take from where they're at to reclaim that power. And when we reclaim that power, we reclaim our confidence. And that's, I think, how we were supposed to live. We were never given a spirit of fear. We were given a spirit of love and of a sound mind, right? And in order to have a sound mind, we have to have that peace of God.
Yeah, it's if you look at this programming machine, SG, how powerful it is if you think about it. I can see it clearly for a number of years, but I watch how viciously people will fight each other for their own enslavement, or how one will fight another for its own enslavement. For example, like you mentioned, these chemicals and these toxins in these products, it's just the most bizarre thing to me now. And I'm talking about myself. I come from the wellness industry. I spent 25 years in the wellness industry, and I've seen the consumer product side, specifically in the nutritional space, for decades. I was on a national level competitive bodybuilding stage for years. So on my way up and on my way back down to owning and operating wellness centers, you would think I would know better. Honestly, you would think I would know better. Yet I have just come to accept, for example, accept what's with these products that are detrimental to my health. You mentioned this cream your son put on. So my dad and I, we both have. I have some condition he has, where right on my middle knuckle, like if you hit something, that part of your knuckle, the big part. So it gets dry and it'll eventually crack open. And also the end of our fingers, like maybe the thumb, the forefinger, maybe the middle finger, but it gets dry, and it gets so dry, it sort of cracks open. And that crack can get deep and it can be painful. And my dad used to complain about it. And so over the years ago, I found one thing that would actually keep that from happening to my hands. And it was cocoa butter, Palmer's cocoa butter for years. And there was just not going to be anything else. It just wasn't going to be, because I've tried anything that I could in my life, and it's completely made my hands look normal. So I guess I must have ran out. Or maybe I guess it might have been one of the things I threw out. No, I think that's one of the things that when I cleared everything out, I'm like, that I can, because my hands are going to get, very painful again. But I think I must have run out or something, or somebody told me something about the cream. It was one of those things that you're talking about. So I thought, and another person said that I've tried everything for psoriasis, and I'm using this stuff on my arms, and it went away. I'm like, wow, really? I know guys that have really bad psoriasis. So I was using it for my knuckles and the back of my hands, of course. And sure enough, guess what happened? That stuff is gone. And I'm not using some type of benzene, something or other that's toxic, right? And so those are the things that had an impact on me, because I didn't look at the minutia of this thing. All I saw was a big picture in warfare. Kind of took people's word for it about this particular factory consumer direct Patriot manufacturer. And so, but as over the course of time, I've come to discover a number of other things, which to me make me even somewhat more embarrassed that I've taken so long to get an understanding of what we really have here and what we're doing. But when you learn things that there's 188,000 phone calls into the poison control center every single year because of what these companies produce, our manufacturer has never had one. In fact, we did it here, and we're among a group of people. They were talking about this one particular individual was having it. Said, yeah, completely non-toxic. Watch, I'll take a big swig of this thing. So they did. I heard they actually might have did the whole bottle. I don't remember exactly which part's true, but they called the poison control center just out of concern, just to make sure. And they asked, who the manufacturer was. And when they told them, they said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. No problem. Even the poison control center knew if it's coming from this particular manufacturer, you've got nothing to worry about. Have a good night. So, just things like that started to embolden me, and those became even more mortar that just went between the bricks of this wall that we're stacking up. But the fact that they are so effective that they can convince us to slowly kill ourselves, and it's okay, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And again, even to a guy like me, where the wellness industry has been my main concern all of my life, even I was easily duped to just make excuses. Well, that's, they're probably telling the truth. And yes, cancer's gone off the chart, et cetera. But, it's just, there's no other way. That was what my mind was saying. There's no other way. If I want this, it has to come with an equal and opposite negative force to it, because that's the world of duality in the universe. But they're very good, man. They're very, very good at getting us to believe their BS, and so good that even when something is absolutely not true, another individual who hasn't arrived there yet, they'll fight with you. You'll get into an argument over something that is provable where they're wrong on an opinion of what I'm discussing right here. But that person will still become emotional, and they'll defend the kill machine. It's crazy and insane, but that's how good they are.
Well, to quote the great Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, if you put red and black ants into a jar and peacefully close the lid and don't do anything, the ants will get along just fine. But if you come back and shake the jar violently, they'll start killing each other, thinking that one another is the enemy. And what we, the people, I think, are collectively learning as a whole, as mankind in the Great Awakening here, and we'll start to wind down here in a second because we're coming close to time. But one of the things we're learning, I think, is that it's not us or them; it's who shook the jar. We have a matrix that we live in. It's a very real thing. I keep telling people the Keanu Reeves film was much more akin to a documentary, and very, very apparent in how they see us and what they like to do, to us and what they hope to do to us, right? That great reset that we're changing into the Great Awakening. We live in this very powerful system of control, and for the first time collectively, because of the information age, the patriots, we the people, the children of the living God out there in this earth can connect with one another on the same, like you said, in the same resonant space, that same spiritually stirred, spiritually awakened, moved into motion space, in the matter of seconds. And we can do so with hundreds of thousands of people. So in other words, this is a tidal wave that they were originally going to use for total control and enslavement. And it's actually becoming their extinction because of things like Tomahawk and things like connecting patriots with experts in, patriot experts in other fields that are outside of the system that are seeking to build alternative economy. Healthcare professionals, former healthcare professionals turned healers. And I'd like to highlight the difference there. As we go forward, our doctors will be, I think, we'll probably think of them much more as healers rather than professionals of any kind, because we're restructuring how we think and how we believe here in the world. And part of that, the good book tells us that faith needs some works, right? We do have to allow God to inspire us. I think it's foolish to take action steps from a place where you don't feel comfortable, where you don't feel secure, where you don't feel that peace of God, because nothing that can result from where you're at right there spiritually is going to be beneficial, right? You want to wait for that inspired action and get into that flow. But when you are there, when you're blended a little bit with that Holy Spirit, it's a force that creates worlds. You're more powerful than millions who are not. And we're learning that here going forward together as one humanity, that we do have power, that we do have a soul connection, that we can leverage this world, that we can take inspired action. God told Joshua to march around the city. He said, I'll deliver you, but you have to do your part. And so Joshua did, and that victory was delivered to them. Now we know Joshua didn't necessarily listen as good as he should have after that, but it's worth understanding that we are called, when we are in that inspired space, we're often called, moved into action really by that God force, that connection to, God and Christ that sustains us. We're moved into action at that point, and we can reshape everything in the world very easily with that sort of connection. And we have it and they don't. And that's why they hate us. And that's why they've spent the last 2.5, 3,000 years thinking up every single way in the book that they could kill us softly and turn that off. And so now, as we're going through this awakening process, we have things like this Patriot manufacturer that you've referenced with Tomahawk and others that are coming up, and they are focused on heightening the spiritual apparatus of the person, helping us to discern what's good, what's not, learn more about our bodies, feed our bodies with a better way, care for our temple in a better fashion. And that, I think, is what this is all about moving forward.
It absolutely is. And I'll tell you, my friend, that, when people decide to take action like you're talking about, whatever it is, it doesn't matter how small. When you take action, knowing full well what's going on in this world, that is the goodness that you are releasing from your own personal spiritual realm, because you're taking action is good. Because if you take action, there's a reason why you do. And why you do it isn't just for yourself, it's for your family, which is good, people you care about, the rest of the planet. Any action at all is what will help this whole thing get moving where it's not. And it builds that momentum force. More people are taking tiny, tiny actions. We all think we've been programmed to worship a hero, right? Like the one person that can do it all. Look, I have people come out. You've been with me, SG. You see kind of what PatriotStreetfighter does whenever we're around a lot of people. And I spend my time trying to help them understand, like, I know the pedestal you put me on, but let me tell you something. Everything you think about me, I love it. It's enamoring that you think those things about me, but I come out here in the open so you can see that not one piece of it's true. None of it. I'm just like you. I'm no different. I want you to see that, because you see me on a camera or hear me on a show or SG, they elevate us. It's very kind and endearing. And yeah, there are reasons to be elevated or elevate others for certain reasons, but it doesn't mean we all can't regain our spiritual elevation that they took from us and make an impact. And that's all we're trying to do here is we're trying to get people together to love each other, right? Stop fighting, arguing, come on this mission and just start and see for yourself. We can't tell you. You have to be part of it. You have to. I sit back and I watch all these people that became part of Tomahawk, watching them like blossom. Like, well, it's kind of like when we first went on tour. It was amazing. I'd have these like big ranchers, right? Because they saw how viciously I was fighting this war. And they had never seen anybody do this. All they saw were politicians bullshitting each other, bullshitting us, lying to the public, and trying to be real suave and debonair when they did it, saying the same BS for decades. And they heard me. And these guys would come out, and like big guys, they'd walk up to me, and not one example, many. And one, I can just pull one out of my mind, one setting his hand on my shoulder and saying, "You have no idea how much we appreciate what you're doing, Scott." And I'm like, "Oh, no, thanks." And tears coming down their eyes. "No, you don't understand how grateful we are for you." Tears coming down their face, reach over and give me like a hug, like not a man hug, like a real hug. And I was like, holy crap. Big, tough ranchers, farmers, guys like this affected me so much. It had such an effect on me. And I was like, holy crap. These people have been like waiting and waiting for something. Please, God, send something that's going to help change this country or save it or whatever. I never saw that coming, but I said all these events we did out in the open, on these open air events, what I also saw were other people just together, this coming together, exchanging names, cards, phone numbers, realizing that they were each other's backyard, becoming good friends. That's what scares them. They do not have what we have. You're talking about the bloodline of Cain, the Canaanites. These people don't have what we have. They don't have the kind of power, the creative power that we have from our side, from the Christ consciousness. That's why they have to utilize ours to get whatever they want. That's why they're afraid of us. God forbid we all wake up, or we wake up in enough numbers, they're scared to death, because they know that once we unleash the Christ consciousness that's trying to break out of us, it's over. There's nowhere for these people to run. There's no hole deep enough to get into, or a rock big enough to get under, that they will not be found by our guys when the time comes. So again, it all comes back to, what can somebody do on a comfort level that everybody could have, even in their own privacy of their own home, having never left their house? It's really simple. Shift your buying habits and giving your money away from these killers, and push it toward a factory consumer direct operation that decided nearly 40 years ago, we're putting an end to this. We're going to create a company that, if they put things out to the public, that it actually is good for the people. So much so, the most exciting thing as we close here, SG, is we know the supply chains are going to become devastated because of what they've done when things come down. And the one supply chain that we're afraid of is food. And the one thing that you have a hardest time getting when food supply chains come down is a protein source. Your body can't live without protein. It can't live without fat. It can live without carbohydrates. You can never have a carbohydrate for the rest of your life. As long as you have protein and saturated fat around, you're going to live a healthy life. Well, what has been in play for decades, 27 years, is the newest evolution of our factory consumer direct partner, the beef industry, a $700 million beef operation, the most sophisticated in the nation, a genetic breed that they've been breeding for decades. And it is a direct pipeline of the best quality beef in the country. And the way they conduct themselves there, same thing, humane, open range, cowboys, hundreds of thousands of head, hundreds of thousands of acres. They don't even have a pen to put these things in. They don't even have a truck to load them on. No cattle prods. Never take a calf from their cow. They're raised in a humane fashion as God would see fit. And even when it comes time to process them, the cowboys drag them off the high ranges, walk them right to the processing plant. No trauma, no anything. And so that's just the latest caveat to something that when the supply chains get hit, everybody who happens to be a member of this, our partner manufacturer, they're not going to have to worry about running out of beef, because that beef is made available, the highest grade you're going to get, strictly and only to everybody who's part of the membership of this particular concern. So from top to bottom, there's no downside, and it fulfills our obligation, and that's to stand up and fight for ourselves.
Wow, incredible. Well, in closing here, as we go through, I guess one of the things that's important to highlight out there for the folks that are listening still listening at this point, if you'd like to find out more information about some of this, you can go to the links below the video. There will be a few different links down there for investigative purposes. You can research for yourself. I would encourage everyone out there, as we go through this process of our awakening and our original understanding of how the world really has been and what the world really can be, with all of we the people aligned into the same fold. Do a little bit of deep research, spend more than 20 or 30 seconds looking into things, get a good balance of feedback for and against, and reach out and make contact and ask questions. It's very important, I think, as we go through this process, to really question everything. And the best way to question everything is to get people into the hot seat, right? Get into the hot spot, put pressure in the areas that it needs to be put in, so that we can get the fullest, most complete picture of truth out there. And with that being said, Scott, I really appreciate you taking time to come out. Like I said at the beginning of our program today, you're sort of like the Patriot resident warfare, the economic warfare expert within the Patriot community. Very powerful. I know that, you've had some conversations about what we the people can do with folks like General Flynn at different points. Not that that's an endorsement, because it's not. But I know that there have been conversations about what sort of actions that Patriots can get involved in. And this has been one that's met with some pretty open reception for a lot of folks out there. And so I really appreciate you coming on to explain more about what it is, and really to get into a deep dive at how it ties into this awakening journey, because that's what this is all about. As we rise, they fall, and we're going to witness their complete embarrassing demise.
Absolutely. And that's really the end game here, folks. It's it's like anything else. For the architecture to serve the planet, as we bring down one, you have to bring another up at the same time. You can't bring one down and stand there in the smoking rubble and say, what do we do next? Well, guess what? You can't support the needs of the population. You have to be erecting it on the way up. And this is just one of those many things out there that are being erected right now, the quantum banking system, all these things. And if we can do anything at all, it is to help them accelerate the whole process whereby that tipping point happens. And we can finally become free beings like we were always designed to by our creator. And once you have that level of freedom, and also you feel better because your body is not under a withering attack of all this stuff. You don't know how good, how bad you have felt in the past until you feel really good. But the body's very dynamic. It'll take the lower level of comfort that you live with, and it'll make it perfectly normal. That's how the brain protects itself. But when you change these things in your lives and your energy wise and everything about your clarity, vision, your ability to think, just don't have that general malaise of everyday life, and it's not there anymore. You're like, my God, I had no idea how bad I really felt. So yeah, come out and take a look. Look, you're not going to be disappointed if you dig really deep, really hard. You're not going to be embarrassed. You're not going to be self-conscious. You're not going to be anything but like, holy cow, this is awesome. It's like we all went through it. And if you decide, hey, I get it, I absolutely want to be part of this movement, and great, then you can line up forces with SG. Just go to the site you'll see below there, tomahawkswitch.com. You're making a switch away from their kill machine, tomahawkswitch.com. And there's a drop down box, and you'll see it at the top. Click the drop down right there, click SG, boom. If you'd like to put information in there, you don't have to, but if you do, you will have one of our soldiers reach out to you, and they'll give you what is called the tour, give you a bigger picture, visual picture, so you can see clearly what Operation Tomahawk is all about. Yeah, it's pretty simple. If it doesn't, look, I tell people, if something doesn't resonate with you, walk away. You got to start at some point listening to yourself, trust yourself, go more by feel than what you think, because that's what they took from us. Intuition is, this feels right, this feels true, this feels just, an act. They made us completely one half our brain, left brain, totally left brain, and they can manipulate the left brain. Logic, illogic, they can manipulate. They cannot manipulate the Christ consciousness or the spirit inside of you. And that's your right brain thinking, your gut, your intuition. And that'll tell you everything you need to know. So anyways, SG, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And thanks for the battle that you've put on out there, the information battle, because you had a major impact. The world knows that for sure. And it's truly an honor to have you, having reached out to me to learn about Operation Tomahawk, because I don't connect with people. I don't reach out to influencers. I have allowed people to come to the movement. I've never reached out to try to get people to become part of it. And I decided that from the beginning. I'm around, some very powerful speakers every month at the Reawaken tour in the green room where we all speak. I don't approach anybody. Whoever's supposed to be on this battlefield, their energy will bring them there. If they're not, then the energy won't. So you obviously were one of those guys that are aligned with this. And when you reached out, I couldn't have been happier.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And I hope you have a great day, my friend. And to the folks out there, thank you very much for listening in today for the second audio chat on this pet project of the Q News Patriot, if you will. And for the audience out there, I will be back with you on air in the audio file series with audio file 46 again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. This is SG Anon. Bye-bye.